3 days later, my mother-in-law came, and in all sincerity, I broke. That was when I could even cry. So I started crying, and I ran to her to hug her, and she shoved me apart. I don't know what you're crying for. My son does not want tears.
A friend of mine that wanted to get married during the period I got married also, but then hers didn't work. She was now like, ha, now no, I'm now better than you, Seth.
At the time, he told me I wasn't allowed to eat anything in the house until I paid 50,000 naira. That's their custom.
Something someone said to me. So he asked, so what you have? What did your late husband leave you? Was there a property? Are there assets? And I mean, it was pretty early for me to start organizing in my head in that regard.
The fact that broke me, the fixed the burial, I wasn't aware. I got to know from one of the pastors.
I remember the time there was a bit of a brawl like that. The issue was that they wanted to use bottle to shave my mom's hair.
My husband's elder brother walked up to me. He said that he will never for his life give my children anything. That any day I saw him giving my children anything, I should check that thing if it's not poison, because he will never do it as a mistake.
Hello there, my name is Diane Carlo with a Q, founder of WiCare Lekota Foundation. We are here to empower women to transform society with primary focus on young widows. June is a crucial month for raising awareness about the needs of widows across the world. In 2011, the United Nations established June 23rd as International Widows Day to recognize and raise awareness about the needs of these women and their families. Since inception, WiCare Lekota Foundation has recognized this day and has encouraged other people to show support. Did you know in Africa, approximately 1 in 10 women above the age of 14 have been widowed?
It's critical to understand that widowhood is the largest global women problem and needs to be addressed today. Now let's take it to Nigeria.
In May 2015, the federal government signed into law the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. Now, this act is supposed to protect people against all forms of violence, including harmful widowhood practices. Some of these harmful widowhood practices include the imposition of extensive and restrictive mourning rites, such as dress code, seclusion, feasting, which all have great implications on the widow's status. Traditional barriers to access of land, housing, employment, or other means of livelihood. Seclusion from engaging in any economic venture or personal work to earn a living. Expecting the widow to shoulder the responsibility of the funeral rites. Murderous practices that inflict not just physical harm but also psychological harm. Now all these and many more. With all these harmful widowhood practices mentioned here, the act which the government has signed into law is yet to be implemented. Now you will agree with me that widowhood is the fastest way to transition into poverty in our society. Now let's listen to some beautiful, amazing, winning Wonder Women as they tell us the story.
My name is Cynthia Ifoma Avara. I'm 39 years old. I come from a family of 4. I was married for 12 years. I'm a mother of 4, 3 girls and a boy. My kids are currently aged 14, 11, 10, and 3 years old. My late husband passed on 2 years ago. So I've been in this journey for about 2 years plus, or 2 years counting. He passed on precisely March 28, 2022. It happened on a Monday, the day I will never forget. That fateful day, that day went as normal as like every other day. We're together as a family, just staying, having family time. Although he had underlying health issues, which we had been managing for some time, on that 50th day he was not sick, he was just taking out his usual routine drugs. But he had cardiovascular issues, he was asthmatic, he also had glaucoma, he lost his sight, and at that time I had a baby who was about 7 months plus. So that fateful day, during our family time, we're just hugging, being all lovey-dovey. And as usual, he was watching his match. He dozed off. The kids were there with him. I had to go and bath my baby to prepare him for the night. By the time I got back, I saw he was asleep on the couch. I had to take the kids inside to sleep to prepare for school the next day. I left him there. I went to the room to nurse my son. At about 10 p.m., my late husband, got back into the room. I was like, honey, everybody just abandoned me in the parlor. What happened? I said, I'm just breastfeeding Benny. I planned to come back. And he just ignored. He got on the bed with me and we started gisting. At the time, we were not at our place. I was at my mother-in-law's place. And the room where we were was not lighted. The lights were off, they switched off, just the reflection of the TV lights. So he lay on the bed with me. I was just sitting upright, nursing my son, and we were gisting. I remember talking about a client who passed on the previous morning, and she just had a baby just because of anxiety and anger and all that. She died, and my husband, like, just like that, I said yes. And that was the last conversation I heard from him, just like that. So I was expecting, I not told him, I said, yeah, she knew she had CS, she didn't control her anger and all that. I was expecting a response from him, and he wasn't responding. The next thing I heard was a fall, and I threw my baby on the bed, and I was like, honey, honey, and I ran out. I couldn't even go to switch on the light. Immediately I saw him, he was gasping for breath. He's always with his inhaler. I took the inhaler. I squeezed it into his mouth. He still wasn't responding. I started screaming. I was screaming, Jesus, Jesus. I got my anointing oil, poured on him and all that. So my scream alerted my children, woke them up. And they came and saw their dad lying on the ground. And they were screaming, Mommy, what is this? I said, Gigi, hold Benny, that's the baby. And I ran off. I went to the neighbor. I banged on her door like never before. And I was screaming, Mommy, Mommy. And she herself was frightened, thinking it was robbers. She didn't want to respond. I kept on banging with everything I had in me. And from afar, she's like, who is that? And I shouted, Mommy, it's Abel, Abel, Abel. Immediately she ran out. What is it? I said, I don't know. And we got back into the room. And because of his health issue, I became an auxiliary nurse, so I'm always checking his vitals and all that. So I checked, he still had a pulse. She said, let her call the neighbors. She called some younger guys. And I was looking at him. I quite didn't understand what was going on. So the neighbors came in. They tried to lift him, to take him to the hospital, but he was on the big side, big side. So the guys that came in were these slim guys. They couldn't lift him, so they had to alert the security of the estate. That was taking much time. I finally managed to carry him to the car. So my neighbor brought her car because I couldn't drive in my own car, and I was sitting behind him. But by the time they put him into the vehicle, because he was big, his legs were already being stiff, so I couldn't sit for them to lay his leg on. They had to shove it inside. I sat in front. My mind was just panting, and immediately I said, my kids. I told the senior one. At that time, she was 12. My baby was 7 months plus. The other one was about, she was 12, about 8. My other one was about 7. So I told them, go to my neighbor's place, carry the baby. I was even putting on my nighties. I had to go and put on my own this. And we sped off to the hospital. While we were there, I called his mom. So I let her know what was happening. I told her, Mommy Abel, I couldn't even speak. I was shaking. And the person driving just collected and said, your son is unconscious. We are rushing to the hospital. So we took him to NMPT hospital, which is in the complex where we were at the moment. By the time we got there, that drama, we took him straight to the emergency. The nurses came out and like, he's on the big side. They cannot put him on the stretcher. Who are those that put him into the vehicle? They should bring him out. And I was screaming like a mad person. What do you mean? We had to cover another set of security that helped us out. By the time they carried him, just rushed him to the emergency, lay him on the ground, trying to do CPR and all that. I was just standing looking at them. It didn't take time. The doctor said, the moment they were checking his vitals, because I already know the readings, the way it goes. As I saw the pulse, it wasn't reading. I knew something was wrong, but I just needed a confirmation. I was just there alone with my neighbor. She was the only one that went with me. The doctor now asked, who is the relative of this man? The neighbor said I was the one. Said, can she take it? Call her. I said, anything you want to say, tell me, I'm ready. And he told me that my husband did not make it, that he died before we got to the hospital. I can remember going numb. I was in shock. I couldn't talk. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. His body was still on the ground. I just went close to him there, sat down. I was just looking at him from head to toe. I was like, honey, you did not even consider Benny. Benny is a baby, just left like that. What happened? Explain to me, what did you see? Because it looks like a dream. You're having a conversation with someone and just like that, it happened. And he said, since he didn't die there, we have to take the corpse out. I should call a relative to sign him out. I was not in a position to sign him out. I called his aunt. She said she was at Abuja at the time. I called his siblings. Nobody was picking calls. This was at about between 11 p.m. to 12 a.m. I was just there. I was there. A friend of his that's abroad called, and I was like, he wants to talk to Abel. I said, Abel's gone. It's not possible. I spoke to him some hours ago, and I told him I'll call back. Abel is gone. I'm lying close to his corpse. And he said, let us pray, anything can happen. So at the time, I didn't have anybody to sign his corpse out. The doctor said they couldn't deposit his corpse into the morgue. They had to take the corpse back. It gave me hope because I believed strongly that by morning miracle would have happened. I stayed there with the corpse. I saw my husband turn blue. I never knew corpses to turn blue. He turned blue. I was there, they were tagging him. I was just looking. I called everybody I knew to come and help me sign off, but nobody responded. I now called a family friend, a distant uncle of his. He happened to stay at the same area where we're staying, but it was quite a distance. If you know Warri very well, we're staying at DSC, and this happened in NNPC complex at Ekpan. And he told me it's quite a distance, he can't make it, that we should take the corpse back home. So we carried the corpse, put the corpse back into the car, and I refused to sit in front. I said I was going to sit with the corpse so we could take it back home. Then the next morning, take it to the morgue. Meanwhile, his mom called that period, and I called my parents just to break the news. And my mom kept on asking, "Who is there with you?" I said, "No one." By the time we got to the hospital gate, God in his infinite mercy touched the heart of that family friend. And he came with a group of soldiers, and they were able to transfer the corpse from the vehicle to the morgue. That was where my journey started. I went home, broke the news to my kids, and my neighbor said they were just praying. They held hands, and they were believing God that their dad would come back home. But to their own surprise, I came back alone. I was in shock. I didn't cry, I was just pacing around. By the time I got back to the room, I went to that same spot where he fell. I went to the bed. I was living like a mad person, like, did this just happen? And I remember the doctor sent one of the nurses to go with me since I didn't have anybody. And she was like, "Cynthia, are you okay?" I said, "I'm fine. Cry if you want to cry." I said, "There's nothing to cry about. I'll go back again. I'll stay for some minutes. I'll just be staring on the ground, staring on the bed, go to the restroom, come back, sit down." Throughout the night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, my mother-in-law called and asked how we were doing. I said we were doing fine. If I had informed my parents, I said yes, my mom was on her way. And I asked her a question, "Mommy, when are you coming?" And the first thing she told me was, "Would my coming back bring Abel back to life?" That broke me. I waited. My mom came in, my siblings came, friends, families, they're coming in. 3 days later, that same day, a relative of my husband called me to tell me that they had moved my husband's corpse from the morgue where we deposited it to the village. If I was aware, I said I wasn't. She said she just wanted to let me know. 3 days later, my mother-in-law came with my sister-in-law. And in all sincerity, I broke. That was when I could even cry. So I started crying. And I ran to her to hug her, and she shoved me apart and said, "Shift. I don't know what you're crying for. My son does not want tears. He's happy where he is." And I just stayed back. A lot happened. At the time, he told me I wasn't allowed to eat anything in the house until I'd paid 50,000 naira. That's their custom, to be able to access any of my husband's property or anything. Thankfully, my mom was around, so my mom was doing the cooking. My mom didn't want to eat. They were cooking theirs, we were cooking ours. We paid the money. My mom said, "People know she's not doing anything. Where will she get the money from?" I said, "It's not her business that I have to pay the money." What surprised me in this whole thing, that my father-in-law passed a year before. So my mother-in-law had the experience. I was supposed to set a precedent for me, but They wanted to punish me. They wanted to deal with me because I had an outspoken husband who defended me at all odds. He never allowed his family to talk down at me. So it was the right moment for them to strike. The funeral preparations, he called me, I should talk to his friends should raise money to bury him. I said, I've never heard that friends bury someone. He has kinsmen. A lot happened. The part that broke me, they fixed the burial, I wasn't aware. I got to know from one of the pastors, and he came visiting that day, and he just said, Cynthia, sit down here. I sat down. And he told me, I hear say, you know, they cry. So one of my husband's distant relatives, the man that deposited his corpse in the morgue, came to visit during the condolence and dropped the sum of 100,000 naira with the kids. And my mother-in-law collected it and handed it over to my sister-in-law. 2 days later, I requested for the money, saying they should transfer it into my children's accounts. And she said the money would be kept in their custody. And for future purpose, anything I wanted to do for the children would go through them. Later on, she called me and asked me what my plans were after the funeral. I told her my plans after the funeral was to go back to my place at DSC. And she said because she planned to take Momsi to Asaba, that thank God Abel died, because they wouldn't have been able to pursue him or chase him out of the house. And I didn't say a word. I went back in. Prior to this, 3 days when my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law returned, my sister joined back to Asaba. She joined my sister-in-law and her friend back to Asaba. Unknowing to them that she was on a call. We were having a discussion, and she told her friend that she knew that Abel was going to die, that he has been sitting on a time bomb. And my sister called me to tell me. I didn't say a word. Fast forward to the funeral. The day of the funeral, I went early to the village. I was there. Church was there. I got to the family. As I was going, they told me, carry the sheets, carry pillow. What are we using it for? I said, I don't know when I get there. My mom went with me, my kids went with me. My kids came in a day before the funeral. Because of the trauma they were passing after their dad's demise, I had to ask for permission for them to go home, which my mother-in-law declined. But my mother insisted, and they went to the village to stay with my parents, my dad and my siblings. So on the day of this funeral, according to them, it was a church funeral, so I was supposed to attend. My brother-in-law refused, said I was not going to participate in the funeral, I should sit down there. I sat down there, just my siblings, my children that were out there, my mom, relatives were sitting around me. They called these Urobo women to come and sit, old women to come and sit with me. Luckily, I had relatives around me. So after hovering around for a bit, they didn't have anywhere to sit. They left because they planned for me to sit inside the room. But because I came earlier, I was asked to sit in the sitting room. During the funeral, when they were going for the interment, as I was wailing and crying, my sister came in and asked me for my ring, that they asked her to get my ring. I didn't say a word. My mom said, go back and tell them if they want the ring, they should come themselves. they asked her not to participate in the funeral. So if they want something from her, they should call themselves, and she left. Shortly after, my mother-in-law's friend came in and said, Cynthia, let me see your hand. I showed her my hand. Prior to that, my mom had collected my wedding band and kept. And I showed her. And she was like, that's good. You're not putting on the ring. So where is it? I didn't say a word. So they asked you to bring the ring and you refused to bring the ring. Why? Your sister was there coming, talking nonsense. Where is she? And my sister was there and a fight wanted to ensue. I told my sister to come out. She was going to deal with her. My family members, my granduncle, my parents, they were there, walked her out so that she had no rights. After the funeral, we had this Igbo tradition, they have this in-laws greeting. So my parents were doing their in-laws greeting. They called this brother-in-law of mine. He said he was not going to show his face, he was not participating. My parents asked, is there anything I'm supposed to do? They said, according to their tradition, I'm supposed to stay how many days, 50 days, blah, 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 long story short. But because it's a Christian funeral, that I was supposed to come the next day. My children to come the next day to kill goats, but that it was monetized. And because they are very young, they would stand in for them. My dad said, is there anything I'm supposed to do? They said no. So because according to our tradition, they're supposed to take me back home. But that since I'm not ready, my things are still at Warri. They will allow me to go. And they agreed. And my parents left with my kids, just my mom and my brother with me, and my younger sister, 3 of them. So I went back with my kids and back to Warri. They went to the house. By the time I got to the complex, the reception I got, everybody was sizing me from head to toe. I walked in procession, my mom and all that, and the next thing I heard was, I'm not poison her when her husband did. And now I go poison her. And I was quiet. Another of my sister-in-law said, brother before wife. The other one said, I will deal with her. The other one said, you are trying to free her, she doesn't want to be free. Say now this worry we dey, we go deal with her. I didn't say a word, I just walked past. No welcome, door or anything. The parlor was full. And I walked into the room, I was crying. And my mom said, before I open my eye and close it, start picking your things. I was just quiet. 2 relatives of my mother-in-law barged into the room and saw my siblings picking my things. And they were like, where the hell do you think you are going to? They started raining insults on my mom. That I'm not supposed to leave. Today that they buried my husband, I'm not thinking about my mother-in-law who lost his son. My mom said she has a place. She has to go back to her house that they rented. And they were like, it's not possible. The friend who attacked me at the funeral came back and said raining insult at my mom. I told my mom that she did not train the children well, that she thought it was the mess her daughter made there, that they were going to deal with me, that she will see how she can train me and 4 children. My mom said, I know that I'm not wealthy, but I don't beg for food, so they will not lack. And my younger brother stood up and like, why are people following them to argue rubbish? If now you that say after burial, they go carry the mama come out, you go still stay, go allow your pikin make you stay. And she said, who said that? Nobody said that. The relatives that were there, and like, who would have made such a statement? And my mother said, I don't want to call him. My mother said, it's his sister that said it. And then the friend said, even at that, is this something new? And we left. While we were going, another of the relatives there in the sitting room said, give me, go and collect the car key. Collect the car key from them. The car key was with my brother. My brother was waiting for anybody to confront him. My sister-in-law, the one that has been making all these comments, said, that house at DSC, is my connection. The rent will expire in this March, this April. So it was buried in April, a month after. We will see to it. Now this worry all of us there. I left. We drove to the house. I got to the house. Leaving your house to your in-laws place with your husband and coming back without him. I was having nightmares. I was hallucinating. We were sending threats to my mom for her to bring me back. I stayed there days after. They called me from the village telling me that I had to come to the Abraka, and I told them that I couldn't go without the consent of my dad. After the threats that my mom got after my husband's funeral, I had to leave urgently back to my parents' place with my kids. I left my keys with my neighbor, but weeks later I got information that my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and her husband got to my place, changed the lock, and burnt my things that were in the house. That's not being enough. I wanted to get the death certificate. I went to the hospital where he was receiving treatment. After making payments and all that, the doctor refused to give me the death certificate, saying that even if I'm the next of kin, that the death certificate belongs to my mother-in-law, and until she dies before I can access it. Now what do I want to do with the death certificate? I thought I just needed to have it. That not being enough, she sent someone to my parents' place. That they gave me 3 months that I would come back and beg. They would see how I would survive without them. That I must come back and apologize to her with the kids, and that the kids do not belong to me. The kids belong to them. That what was holding both of us is gone. So she wants her kids back. And my mom told the messenger that go and tell her if she wants the kids, she should come here herself. That all she did in worry, I condoned it because I was at her place. She should come over to this place. The senior man of the family called me and said I didn't perform the rites I was supposed to. That they told him I didn't come to the burial from the family house, that I came from my own house. I said no, I've been in the family house all through. That I was supposed to choose a husband after the funeral, and I'm supposed to choose one of my husband's relatives. And I told him I had to call back to my father, and my dad told me I didn't have any connection with them. It has to be a transaction between both families now, since my husband was no more. So they did the calling. My dad told them, according to our own tradition, as far as I have a son, I cannot get married to any family member. I'll get married to my son, which means I'll take care of my children. I wouldn't marry someone else. One of the experiences I have or I've gotten raising my kids, I'm grateful to God that I have a wonderful family. They have been very supportive. Thanks, a big thanks to my mom, my dad, my siblings, my husband's friends, close friends, some of my friends. They've just been there through this journey in one way or the other, helping and supporting me for the kids. For my in-laws, since my husband passed, since the day of the funeral till date, I've not heard a word from them. They have not reached out, and I'm doing better off without them. I'm grateful. My son, who was 7 months plus at the time, It's already 3 years old. My daughter 14, the second one 11, and the other one 10. It's not been an easy journey, but I just give God the thanks and all the glory. WiCare has played a significant role in my life. I joined WiCare when I was very depressed. They made me to discover myself, taught me a lot through their trainings, both virtual and physical trainings and seminars. I got to meet people of like minds. They've built me and helped me emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and also taught me parenting. They've impacted my life in so much ways, and I'm grateful to God for that. Widowhood is not bondage. It's not a baggage. It doesn't mean you have to be wicked and mean to people, and no one is exempted. Me na Cynthia Ifoma, I be winning woman, and my mama na Wonder Woman.